Hello, my name is Zachary Grant. I'm the manager and director of the Sustainable Student Farm at the University of Illinois Urbana campus. Today, we're going to be talking about small farm equipment in a presentation entitled Market Farm Tools and Systems. This presentation was originally adapted from a program put together by John Hendrickson at the University of Wisconsin. The basic objectives we're going to be covering today are capitalizing a market farm, capitalization priorities for a market farm, equipment for the front end of the market farm, for the middle of the market farm, the back end of the market farm, and then finally some concluding thoughts and questions about small farm equipment. Before we begin, take a moment to look at the next two slides that together form a table from the ATRA website outlining equipment need estimations for a range of farm scales. Tables like this are useful for organizing priorities based on the different specialty equipment types encountered on a farm. As you learn more about the different areas of the farm and their respective equipment needs, you can reference this table as a guide to help you make decisions about equipment purchases on your respective scale. This table is not an all or nothing recommendation. There is a continuum of recommendations here, and final decisions should be based on what works for your farm and your budget. Here's the second half of the table. Again, these are just guidelines and not hard and fast rules. A link to this table can be found at the bottom of this slide. Now we'll move on to the presentation. It is possible to get started with what you have on hand. With nothing more than a rake, shovel, and a hoe, you can grow a lot of food in a large kitchen garden and sell whatever you don't eat. Many roadside farm stands have started this way. However, you ultimately want to grow into a wide range of tools and infrastructure to grow your small farm business effectively and profitably. A generic rule of thumb is to think about $10,000 per acre for startup capital costs. Based on that number and effective research, you should be able to get the equipment you need for your scale. So you might be asking, where do you get your $10,000 per acre? There are a variety of sources and lifestyle adjustments you can employ to finance your operation. Having at least one member of your family unit or household maintain a regular day job is the best strategy in transitioning a small farm into a full-time enterprise. Having that reliable source of income will allow you to comfortably invest in your business without depleting all of your savings. Getting lucky, acquiring inheritance, saving for a few years, spreading that investment over a number of years, and growing high return, high value crops are some other options as well. In the loan grant world, there are also some options. While traditional financing may not be for everyone, the USDA does offer microloans up to $35,000 with a 7-year repayment plan. Current interest rates are between 2.25 and 4.25%. These are very similar rates to student loans and refinancing your home. A new option that has arisen in the past few years is the crowdsourcing option. Websites like Kickstarter allow small business startups the option of making their case for donations from the larger World Wide Web. The startup usually makes a video to present their case, offers prizes at a variety of donation levels. Some examples could be t-shirts or a discount off of a CSA share. Kickstarter then takes a small fee, and if you reach your goal by the end date of the campaign, your project gets financed. The projects that get funded are the ones that are great at branding, selling their image, and best at telling your story. Setting goals and priorities for how your business will grow is a great framework for making decisions about what equipment to purchase and when. Another useful tool that can save time and money is to seek out growers who are using equipment similar to your scale. You need to see it in action and what does and doesn't work for them in regard to each piece of equipment. This research step could single-handedly save you thousands of dollars on an unnecessary purchase. It is also important to review each piece of equipment you need and ask yourself a series of questions before purchasing. Does it fit my scale? Does it fit the scale I want to reach? What does it cost? What does it cost to operate? What is the resale value? Is it durable, and can I repair it myself? Is it an easy piece of equipment to use? Is it enjoyable to use? And can others potentially use it? Is it a sustainable piece of equipment in the long run? Do I need it or do I want it? And does it fit within the context of my overall farm plan and farm systems? If there was one area of equipment to emphasize early on, the back end of the farm would be where to start. And this is where we're going to begin our discussion on small farm equipment. Equipment and tools that emphasize the back end of the farm are ones that emphasize efficient harvesting, such as harvest carts and stackable bins, post-harvest handling, such as a washing and packing pavilion, coolers for short, medium, and long-term storage of crops, delivery equipment such as the delivery van, and tools for marketing and sales. You can grow the nicest crops in the world, but if you don't have these tools in place, then you will sell nothing and make no money off of your hard work. This is why emphasis is placed on this area of the farm before other equipment purchases. Harvest carts or wagons are useful tools at a variety of scales. Lugging heavy bins, hundreds if not thousands of feet, can easily wear down employees in the middle of the summer. A simple harvest cart, like the one in this slide, can easily be built or purchased. These tools, in combination with appropriate sized washable, stackable, and sanitizable bins, are a great complement to an efficient harvesting system. Other options include hay wagons attached to tractors or the back of a pickup truck. The folding farm concept was developed by a collaboration between the Sustainable Student Farm and the Department of Architecture's Small Studio. Here, a bike-towed produce trailer holds our washable and stackable harvest bins. We can then bike this to campus where it folds out into a produce stand which we can sell from. This is the new generation folding farm in this slide. Our original model will now be used in the field as a harvest cart to transport bins back to the washing and packing pavilion before sale. The folding farm concept would especially be practical in the context of urban and para-urban farm marketing. Here are the 1.75 bushel washable and stackable harvest bins we use for everything on the farm. These particular bins we purchase from Knowles Produce Supply, although there are many supply companies that sell a variety of harvesting bins. We use these in the field as ground bins for harvesting. Then after post-harvest handling procedures, we put produce in new bins, as seen in this picture, for sale at the market. They stack nicely in all of our delivery vehicles and in folding farm to make efficient use of delivery and marketing space. Nylon mesh bags that we can wash and reuse are a nice complement to the harvest bins. This way, we can batch process 10 to 20 pounds of loose leafy crops, such as salad greens, at a time, using dunk tanks and hand spinning, or using a repurposed washing machine, as seen in this slide. In addition to the full range of harvesting knives and shears needed on a farm for harvesting, some other specialty harvesting aids warrant our attention. For those specializing or growing a large volume of closely spaced leafy green crops, a small-scale greens harvester might be a worthwhile investment. In this slide, the original handheld model is seen harvesting a bed of tightly spaced leaf lettuce. Although, with practice, it can work well on nicely prepared level beds, it is not as good of a tool as its successor on the next slide. Though double the cost of the original greens harvester, not including an 18-volt cordless drill that is needed, this new generation of greens harvester is easier and more efficient to use than the original. It can be used on unleveled beds, and the brush prevents wasted greens from spilling into the path and bed space, thus making for a cleaner second and third cuttings from a bed. If you are looking to invest in a greens harvesting tool at the small scale, this is a better investment than the original model. This may seem expensive, but keep in mind the smallest walk-behind scale greens harvesting unit on a larger scale farm starts at around $8,600. Washing and packing sheds are a critical step and component in bringing safe, high-quality produce to the market. Though you could accomplish some field packing with a well-designed shaded harvest cart, Having an enclosed or partially enclosed structure will be the best solution in the long term. With a wash pack shed, you can remove highly perishable items from exposure to the elements, wash, sort, grade, sanitize, and pack very efficiently. In this slide, a partially enclosed shed has good workflow and access to cold storage nearby. Here are some basics when thinking about setting up a washing and packing shed layout. You would ideally have a roof and the structure be enclosed or enclosable. You would need access to clean water that is ideally plumbed in, not brought in via garden hoses. There needs to be some provision for water drainage and waste removal of the wastewater and other waste items. Appropriate food contact surfaces that are washable and sanitizable. Access to electricity for lights and equipment. A hand washing sink only for hand washing. Storage for post-harvest tools and supplies. Easy access to crop storage facilities, and not near coal compost piles or animal facilities. In addition, having a good workflow to the space so product comes in one side or end and back out the other is very desirable. This type of workflow design helps workers from running into each other and reduces worker fatigue overall. Here's an example of a basic washing setup. This could be set up in a field easily before investment in a more permanent washing and packing structure. This area is still exposed to the elements and would likely need some sort of drop-down sides attached to it to pass a gap audit. How washing and packing relate to gap certification will be discussed in another. Here is another very basic wash shed design, but a slightly more built structure. It is shaded and has access to all the provisions we just outlined, but it is still somewhat exposed on the sides. Plans for this washing pavilion are located on the Leopold Center website, if you are interested. Here is an example of an enclosed wash and pack shed with some detail on the dunk tanks, the washing table with hands-free produce washers, and scales. This is an example of a nice U-shaped workflow space where product comes in one side and out the other. This is a very helpful concept to prevent workers from getting in each other's way. Here is some more detail of the basic hands-free washer for a wash table. These can be set up to allow two hands for washing the product while the water is running over the product from above. Here is the inside of the Student Farms washing and packing pavilion. Our structure is partially to fully enclosed, has washable and sanitizable surfaces, root washing tables, dunk tanks, a hand washing station, sorting tables, and good workflow. This basic structure, not including labor, was about $3,000 to $5,000 worth of materials. The floor has a gravel base with drainage tiles below to move any dirty wash water away from the structure. It is very important that this water be moved away from the structure and not allowed to pool inside. Here's some close-up detail of our sorting table on the left. Note how the table is not too low to prevent worker bending and fatigue. In addition, we have incorporated a holder for a clean bin to sort sellable produce into. The slide on the right shows a close-up of beet bunches on our root washing table. Here, overhead nozzles can be used to wash dirt away from the bunches before being dunked in our sanitizing solution tanks. Here is a final example of a wash pack layout. This example was in this particular farm's early years, where they used a high tunnel structure to build their washing and packing area. The thing I like most about this structure is that there is some contingency for potentially adding heat and or year-round washing and packing. Otherwise, packing early and late in the season can be very uncomfortable for workers. On the larger scale farms, having a totally enclosed, heated structure with access to walk-in coolers is the ultimate goal. These type of facilities can be very expensive though, but these would be required if moving large volumes for wholesale accounts. Walk-in coolers are another area of consideration. It is critical to get produce temperature down as soon as it is harvested. There are plenty of resources online and covered in future sessions to detail what temperature produce needs to be brought down to and stored at. Temperature and humidity greatly impact produce quality. Even if you are hydrocooling in your wash pack area to remove field heat, most produce needs to be held at a certain temperature to increase quality, shelf life, and reduce microbial contamination. Walk-in coolers can be very expensive to start with. Even a used cooler you install yourself can start in the $3,000 to $7,500 range. Having a professional install a new walk-in cooler in the 100+ square foot range would cost nearly $15,000. If you are interested in a long-term storage crops and reliability, an appropriate scaled walk-in cooler is the way to go. To start with, most small-scale growers might want to think about the new CoolBot technology and build their own small cooling room. These CoolBots cost about $300. This is not including the air conditioning unit or the insulated room you need to build. These devices override a stand-up window unit AC shut-off switch in the low 60-degree temperature range. It can then be used to drive these temperatures in a well-insulated room down to 33 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The CoolBots do not control humidity, and rooms are vulnerable to wide temperature swings with the opening and closing of the door. They are great options for small growers and as a secondary cooler for other growers. Here is a case study of a grower spending $1,700 total for a 132 square foot cool room. She can get this room down to about 36 degrees Fahrenheit, which is good for holding most vegetables in the short-term storage range. To get the temperatures lower, the floors would probably need to be insulated better and door openings would have to be limited. She reported a $700 annual operating cost with this room, which is much lower than a smaller conventional walk-in cooler she used to use. As you scale up, there are some washing and packing pieces of equipment that start to make more sense. A wash line / brush washer is the standard in the apple packing industry, but is also used in pepper and tomato grading and sorting. Here, produce is added to a conveyor at one end, where it is lightly washed, sponge dried, and or dry brush cleaned before coming out onto a rotating sorting table. If you have a large volume of round fruit and vegetables to process, this is a must at a certain scale. Here is some detail of the sponge water absorber unit that takes up the excess wash water before it goes out onto the sorting table. And then here is a table reflecting cost and sizes of various wash line units. Barrel washers are common in the 5 to 10+ acre farms where a lot of root crops are grown. The dirty roots are fed in one end, where they are washed and rotated in the barrel washer, and then finally removed at the other end clean. We will now move on to the equipment that emphasizes the front end of the farm. These are the tools needed to start plants, prepare the ground, and physically get them in the ground. Areas include plant propagation, tractors and other power units, tillage tools, and seeding / transplanting equipment. For the sake of this session, and because these tools were discussed in the transplant session, the plant propagation tools have been excluded from this talk. Let's start with walk-behind tractor units. These are power units with PTO attachments for a wide variety of tools from tillage equipment to mowers. They range in price from $1,500 to $5,600 for the biggest diesel units. Implement pricing varies from $100 to $2,300 for the most expensive tillage units. They are useful for all power operations on a farm up to about 5 acres, but that is the very upper limit. They are useful on larger scales for complementing the work of larger tractor units. Walk-behind tractors can be very useful on a small farm before graduating to a larger tractor. They are easier to work on when mechanical issues arise, and for the same amount of money you can get buying a decent used tractor, you could buy a brand new walking tractor and a few essential implements. There are limitations to these devices though. Though a full range of tools are available for walking tractors, some of these tools aren't as effective or efficient in terms of labor hours as their larger tractor equivalents. Operating walking tractors can be very stressful on the body when trying to use on larger areas close to that 5-acre upper limit. Even though you can get more for less than purchasing a decent tractor to start with, the best walking tractors and implements can be very costly. There's also not quite the range of used implements available for walk-behind tractors as can be found for larger tractor units. It is prudent to think about your upper scale you plan to expand into when considering investing in a walking tractor in the short term. At some point, most growers will find themselves purchasing, at the very least, a small cultivating tractor, if not larger tractors. Here are some basic guidelines and advice. Consider new versus used. When it comes to price, used is cheaper, but factor in your own mechanical knowledge, ability, and time, and the availability of parts and service for a used tractor. Some features to look for in a tractor are wide front and high clearance for specialty crops, 30 to 60 horsepower or more as a minimum for power, a 3-point hitch, considering the category 1 or 2 for different size implements, as well as quick hitch adapters, PTO and live hydraulics for different types of implements, power steering, safety features, a creeper gear or hydrostatic drive for pulling a transplanter unit slow enough to get the plants in the ground. And some different implements you could purchase would be things like rotavators, field cultivators, mowers, chisel plows, front-end loaders, discs, plastic mulch layers, transplanters, sprayers, harvesters, and bed shapers. There are some basic features of a tractor that you need to become familiar with. It is important to know the upper weight limits the 3-point lift arms can handle when considering an implement purchase. Also, you need to factor in the horsepower limits when buying a PTO powered implement. Here are some pictures of commonly used primary and secondary tillage tools. Primary tillage is usually the first tillage step to break ground or incorporate cover crops. Secondary tillage is used to create finer seed beds when needed. Careful selection of tillage tools can affect long-term soil health and structure. Choosing tools that beat the soil up the least is beneficial. Research what will work well for your soil type and farming system. Spyders can be a little less violent on soil structure than rototillers and rotovators. The articulated spader at top replicates hand digging, but leaves behind a rougher seed bed without smearing the soil or creating a hard pan. The rotary spader in the bottom picture leaves behind a more finished seed bed while incorporating the cover crops in one pass, but may smear and compact the soil at the bottom of its rotation depth. A subsoil ripper or large chisel plow may be needed to break up this compaction if it becomes a problem. Field cultivators can be used to create a finished seed bed for non-raised bed crops or direct seeded row crops. They incorporate materials and create a level surface in one pass. If a bare raised or plastic raised bed is the planting system for the farm, these would need to be created with a bed maker, discs, or a rotary plow unit. Here are some basic tillage principles to consider. Tillage tools that push soil horizontally, such as moldboard plows and discs, are useful for incorporating crop debris and other cover crops, but tend to create a plow pan. Tillage tools that work the soil more vertically are more gentle on the soil structure, but may not incorporate residues as effectively. Working the soil repeatedly with the same tool tends to create a plow pan and may also repeatedly create conditions that favor certain weeds or ideal conditions for certain pests. It is best to have a number of implements in your tillage toolbox. Now on to seeders. Most market farms will start with a lightweight plate seeder like the Earthway seeder. Their main advantage over the older Planet Junior single row seeder is the weight of the unit. These work well when used alone or in multiple connected setups. Earthways work best with large, round seeds such as corn, beans, and peas. Smaller seeds tend to get stuck behind the seeder plates and are not as effective. There are some adjustments that can be made for smaller seeds, but most growers have a love-hate relationship with them. The student farm uses a 3-row gang of earthways for spot seeding missed gaps in beds and quick plantings of beans or peas. Zhang clean seeders are the next step up for a small farm grower. They can be very expensive investments. The student farm has a 3-point hitch gang of 6 Zhangs with all the rollers that cost about $2,300 with shipping. However, they meter seed more accurately with specifically sized rollers and work well with a wide range of seed sizes and types. Cost is really the only main drawback with the Zhang clean seeders. The pinpoint seeders are great tools for closely spaced salad green production. They require very precise, level, non-cloddy beds to operate effectively in. The 4-row model is also very sensitive to the skill level of the user when it comes to metering out the correct number of seeds with brush adjustments and the depth of the seed placement with the angle of the handle position. For these reasons, they make the most sense in high-value areas such as high tunnels. Here is the 6-row model of the pinpoint seeder, which has a few more features that make it easier to use, such as a depth adjuster and the ability to plant 12 rows in just 2 passes. The Hatfield Transplanter tool is a step up from putting in plants on your knees with a hand trowel, but it is still very labor intensive for putting in transplants on more than 1 acre. It can be used for planting large seeds and potatoes as well. They aren't very durable and may fall apart over time. It is better than planting on your knees, but if you have a tractor, the next slide emphasizes the most important planting tool on a farm. If you have access to a 30 to 60 horsepower tractor, investing in a transplanting implement is the best investment you'll make if you grow large numbers of transplants for your production system. A water wheel transplanter is the best entry implement into the mechanical transplanting world. It creates the hole into which a seated worker can place a transplant while it waters the hole with the starter solution all at once. This creates a precise pattern on the bed top, which makes later hand or mechanical cultivation much easier. It works on plastic or bare ground, though it collects some mud on bare ground, but it is still a usable implement, and can be used with adjustable dibbles in a 1, 2, or 3-row setup. This is a very adaptable implement for the price. It is not as effective as the carousel type planters, but it is much cheaper. A roller dibble or marker is essential for creating straight rows to make later cultivating a much easier operation. There are handmade options and purchased options available. Marking devices are very helpful for creating straight planting rows or grids. This is a critical step for mechanical weed cultivation at a later time. Finally, we will move on to the equipment that emphasizes the middle of the market farm. These are tools that emphasize irrigation, weed management, pest management, and fertility/cover crop management. We will cover irrigation in more detail in the next session, but it is worth mentioning here as part of the larger continuum of tools on a small farm. It is important to start thinking about the different types of irrigation for different types of production systems. Drip irrigation for transplanted/plastic bed production, and overhead irrigation for direct seeded crops. This slide covers some of the basic components of a drip irrigation system. Most small farms will start with an assortment of hand tools used for weed cultivation. However, even large farms still depend on some hand cultivating with efficient tools. Investing in tools that allow the user to work quickly in an upright position are the best. Taking some time to practice the proper technique for each individual tool is helpful. I also want to emphasize that these tools work best when attacking weeds at the thread to first true leaf stage. Beyond that, it is very labor intensive to use hand tools for weed cultivation. Get weeds early and often should be your mantra. Wheel hoes, alone or in combination, are very effective in attacking weeds in path spaces and between rows of widely spaced crops. These can eliminate weeds beyond the first true leaf stage, but are best used and easier on the tool and operator when weeds are young. There are a variety of wheel hoe options for purchase and kits for building your own. Tractor-mounted cultivators start to become necessary in combination with hand weeding tools at the 1 acre plus scale. Below driver or behind the tractor toolbars are available for a variety of tractors. This slide emphasizes some basic attachments that you can get for tractor-mounted cultivators. Toolbars with various knives, sweeps, and discs are a basic starting point for between row cultivation of very straight rows. S-tine cultivators can be used for widely spaced blind cultivation, which is cultivating over crops without the worry of accidentally hitting a crop. They usually consist of 2 or more toolbars with a variety of points or shovel attachments. These are not for close or precise cultivation. However, these are widely available at local farm stores like Farm and Fleet. Tine weeders are lightweight, adjustable, and flexible tines in multiple rows used to blindly cultivate established crops or for stale seed bed preparation. They are best used on weeds when they are very, very small, preferably in the thread stage, which is at the first sign of weed emergence. Basket weeders are usually below driver-mounted implements for precisely spaced rows. They control weeds up to the first true leaf stage the best. They eliminate weeds between the row entirely except for a small strip on either side of the row, which can be managed with hand tools or another precision cultivating device. Here's another close-up of the basket weeder cultivating close to carrot rows. They can also be used for stale seedbed preparation. Finger weeders are belly-mounted cultivators that can cultivate in row for crops with strong established stems. It still requires relatively small weeds and is not very effective on rocky or crusted soil. Torsion weeders consist of flexible tines tilted towards each other that undercut weeds close to the crop row with a vibrating, dragging movement. Because of its simple design, torsion weeders are relatively inexpensive. They can uproot small as well as decent-sized weeds, but are best used only when the crop is well established. Spring hoes are flat blades about 16 inches long. They are more aggressive than torsion weeders, traveling perpendicular to the soil surface and stirring soil just below ground alongside the root zone. The 12-inch Spider wheel has staggered curved teeth and is ground driven. Pairs of Spyders can be angled to pull soil away from the row or throw it back. Aggressive, rapid cultivation of straight rows is possible, even on stony soils. These tools are often used in tandem or with torsion weeders from the previous slide. It is important to take a moment to discuss timing, as it is critical with weed cultivation, particularly in clay soils. This timing is regardless of the method, either hand or mechanical. Weeds are easiest to control when they are young and undeveloped. Soil should not be cultivated when too wet or too dry. The former is more difficult to time in the spring when cultivation is needed the most. Not only does soil moisture affect if you can get in a field or not, but if it rains immediately after a cultivation, then weeds might recover and regrow. So timing is critical. Clay soils tend to hold more moisture, so adding organic matter to improve drainage is critical. Most growers will struggle with what type and how much plastic mulch to use on a farm. There are many benefits to using plastic mulch, such as soil warming, preventing weeds in the entire bed, reducing mechanical cultivation, moisture conservation, and irrigation simplicity with drip, and keeping produce clean. However, there are also drawbacks, such as disposal and environmental concerns with the plastic at the end of the year, controlling weeds on the edge of the plastic and in the plant holes, and the need for additional special equipment to lay the plastic and drip out. There are biodegradable plant-based plastics, but they can be 3 times the cost and are not as durable or easy to lay out with traditional plastic mulch laying equipment. Round bale mulching is a low-tech way to mulch larger areas between widely spaced crops and on top of garlic beds. It can beautify the farm, add organic matter to the soil, and prevent erosion of soil between rows. However, round bales are heavy. You need to have a steady supply, and they need to be placed close to the field edges for access. If you're going to use this system, you need to try to avoid weedy hay or excessively moldy hay. The student farm has been experimenting with using chopped organic straw mulches for garlic bed tops and other raised bed tops with drip irrigation to replace some plastic mulch use. We are currently using a small manure spreader with extended sides and slow speeds on the tractor to attain a thick layer on the bed tops. We are looking to make our own bales and grind them with a bale grinder that can shoot the mulch precisely where we want it. This holds promise for labor efficiency with organic mulch use. The major drawbacks are the additional cost of equipment for this system and the cooling effect organic mulches can have on soil. This is most worrisome for use with warm season crops like tomatoes. We are also using this manure spreader for applying compost and making small static compost piles on the farm. For cover crop seeding, it is critical to have, at the very least, a broadcast seeder and a tine weeder to slightly incorporate the seed. Cover crops are more effectively planted with a grain drill or feed plot drill. This allows seed to be covered for good soil seed contact and better germination. A good broadcaster, whether hand-powered or wheel-driven, can double as a conventional fertilizer applicator as well. A flail mower is the preferred mower for mowing cover crops prior to incorporation, and the field cultivator or rotary spader are the preferred incorporation tools prior to planting. Both conventional farms and organic farms will have the need for sprayers on a variety of scales to apply products. Backpack hand pump, electric, and gas-powered sprayers are the entry-level setups. Though low in cost, they are not effective at applying products evenly over larger areas. 15 to 30 gallon small tank sprayers powered by 12-volt batteries can be mounted on four-wheelers or utility vehicles. There are also small pull-behind or 3-point hinge mounted boom sprayers that may be appropriate for larger acreages of low-growing vegetable crops. For growers with a few acres of sweet corn, a high boom sprayer that can pass through rows even when corn is 4 to 6 feet tall is usually a necessary investment. For orchards and vineyards, an air blast sprayer, either a pull-behind or 3-point hitch mounted model, becomes a necessity as plants become large enough that spray penetration into the plant canopy requires air as an additional carrier. It's difficult and time-consuming to treat lots of trees effectively with a hand sprayer, and applicator exposure is also a concern. Some other stuff that is useful for managing a farm in the non-traditional tool category would be things like computer programs such as Excel, QuickBooks, and Ag Squared for managing farm finances and production, headlamps for early evening work, quality rain gear and boots should not be underestimated, ear protection for banging metal to operating diesel tractors, Quickcrete and other concrete products for small projects, and the use of off-farm consultants in the form of accountants, lawyers, tax preparers, and other specialty consultants. The study this presentation was created from noted some interesting trends, most notably that equipment investment per acre, when averaged, was relatively similar across the different size farm categories. This ranged between $7,500 to $12,000, with the average being just shy of $10,000 per acre. An interesting ratio to track over time is the gross sales of your farm to the capital investment. In other words, the capacity or efficiency of your farm's tools, equipment, and facilities to generate income. This can lead to a more careful analysis of return on investment. This slide emphasizes or summarizes the $10,000 per acre capitalization rule. If you have confidence in your building abilities, you should consider building your own tools to suit your needs. It can save you tons of money if you have time in the winter. Here is a grower named Chris McGuire who built his own prone position laydown work cart. This cart is probably a few $100s in materials and labor, yet it accomplishes the same task as a $9,000 hydraulic-powered Drangen work cart. Some concluding thoughts. It is important to think carefully about the best scale for your operation. Set goals and create a capitalization budget. Be cautious but not timid when it comes to purchasing equipment from others. It is important to learn from others. Visit as many farms as you can. You need to start small, be realistic, and enjoy the work. Always consider how each investment is meant to contribute to your business and its success. And always remember that tools are no better than the person using them, so training is important. No one is more important to your personal safety than you, is something to consider. And if you don't believe work is your friend, then it absolutely will not be. Thank you very much.